Avatar: The Way of Water, after just 18 days, has crossed into the $1.4 billion global cumulative realm, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. This movie certainly now seems to have $2 billion in the bag, but how much further than that can it go? And can we make sense of some of the comments that Cameron recently followed up on from his previous comments, where he said that Avatar: The Way of Water would have to be one of the top 3 or 4 grossing films of all time to become profitable, then later walking that back and saying, well, it needs to be in the top 10. Which one is right? Or, as I suppose, both may be true. I'll explain. Here we go. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's great to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video that may not yet be subscribed to the channel, please do take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please leave a comment before you head out the door today. Avatar: The Way of Water, still smashing up the box office and doing it in truly tremendous fashion. We are here on day 19, Tuesday, as we record this January 3rd, and this thing just keeps going and going. It's going to be crossing the $1 billion mark in the international box office today as of this filming, and $1.4 billion globally. Let's take a look at some of the updated numbers. Just today from Deadline Magazine, Avatar: The Way of Water tops $1.44 billion global, will cross $1 billion overseas today in the international box office. Continuing to leg out, James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water has grossed more than $1.443 billion globally through Monday. Of that, the international box office reps $997 million, which, as we previously noted, means that the 20th Century Studios Disney title will top $1 billion overseas with today's, that's Tuesday, January 3rd's, grosses included. And from here, I suspect that there's probably at least another 750 to maybe as high as 900 million left in the tank for this movie because of the week-to-week performance, not just on the weekends, but also during the weekdays as well. Now, granted, we've had a big 2 weeks here, Christmas holidays, New Year's holidays, a lot of people off of work, off of school, not just here in the U.S., but overseas in most major markets as well. So that is playing into a big factor. The question becomes, now that we get into this first week of 2023, how well is that going to hold up? Certainly, we're unlikely to see the weekday performances that we've been enjoying with Avatar the last 2 weeks, but how much of that may then shift into the weekends at this point? We've seen a lot closer numbers between weekdays and weekends these past couple of weeks, barring some of the inclement weather, and of course, the Christmas holiday and Christmas Eve holiday itself, which does tend to play a factor on theatrical box office. But as we now come into the regular work and school schedule, I think we'll see more of that shift. That percentage is going to show up on the weekends more heavily than it has up to this point as compared to weekdays. Let's look at the breakdown from the numbers. So as we return to this chart once again, you can see exactly what we've been discussing. You probably saw us talking a little bit about this on the live show Sunday afternoon right here on Valiant Renegade with my co-host WDW Pro from thatparkplace.com. Look at the daily box office performance for this thing. Skip past the first weekend and that first week, that December 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd. There was a lot of majorly bad weather events happening in large swaths of the United States that week that kept a lot of people home, physically could not or would not go out in storms like that, and that was a big, big issue for them. But as we look to the second weekend, December 23rd, 24th, and 25th, again, probably the worst calendar lineup that one could hope for a movie's release to come out over Christmas, with Christmas Eve falling on a Saturday, Christmas Day on a Sunday. That hampers it, but look at what happened in the days after. Federal holiday, December 26th. Federal holiday, January 2nd. Look at the hauls that they had on those Mondays, especially compared to the weekend. Look at Tuesday the 27th, 24 million. Wednesday the 28th at 20 million. Thursday the 29th at 20.1 million. That is one hell of a hold on the box office from weekend to weekdays. And it didn't really stop. This weekend, once again, saw a tremendous haul. And look at the January 2nd, Monday. Very little drop-off from the weekend itself, thanks to that federal holiday. And yes, let's show you this weekend box office performance. You're looking at that correctly. On December 16th, the first weekend, $134 million. December 23rd, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day weekend, $63 million with a 53% drop-off. That is incredibly good, considering that was Christmas and some terrible weather that kept people home. But look at the next weekend. It actually jumped up 6% in the third weekend, the weekend that just went by. That shows you what this movie is doing right now, and that is truly amazing. So the question then becomes, if this movie continues on this roll, if this movie continues to motion out from this point at $1.4 billion globally to somewhere around $2.2 to $2.3 billion globally by the time its run concludes, perhaps even higher. It just depends on how well this holds. Again, there's not a whole lot of competition, if any, to speak of in January. This movie has a clear roll-off for the next 4 to 5 weeks, potentially, before anything really big comes along that could challenge it. Now, there are some counter-programming, things like Megan and some other movies like that, but I'm not sure that's going to have much of an impact on the audience that's going to see Avatar, not just once, but twice, in some cases 3 times or more, just like they did with Top Gun Maverick. And sure enough, the domestic run of this movie is already exceeding a 3.3x from its opening weekend, and it's only on day 20. This is something that Marvel movies are incredibly jealous of having, because they're usually done after just a couple of weeks. Most of their box office is in. Not so with Avatar. I don't think this movie quite has even maybe 65% of its total box office run. Maybe 70% of its total box office run is already accounted for. But then again, it's very difficult to predict. I'm going to lean towards the lower end of that range, maybe in the 60 to 65%. And that's why I think that this movie has maybe another $800 million, another 50% beyond where it already is now before it reaches the end of its run. But does that mean this movie is actually going to be profitable? What about the stuff that James Cameron said that we've talked about here before? Let's kind of dive back into that. Now, when Cameron said that this movie had to be one of the top 3 or 4 grossing films of all time to break even, we were looking at a roughly $2 billion total haul for that to be the case. That means that this movie's all-in costs were somewhere close to $1 billion, which is wild, but not terribly crazy when you consider the amount of time, 13 years, that went into producing this film, and what is undoubtedly a massive marketing budget from the Walt Disney Company, hundreds, $200 to $300 million of marketing from Disney, in addition to marketing partners out there spending their own dollars on something like this. But then James Cameron walked it back a little bit and said it needed to be in the top 10. Well, that would put the total haul somewhere in the range of about $1.5 to $1.6 billion. Still a big haul, but that's about where it is right now. So which is true and why? What are the studios and the distributors actually getting back from Avatar: The Way of Water? Let's presume at this point that Avatar: The Way of Water is going to haul in a breakdown that looks something like this. For this, we're going to presume some final hauls, some projections at this point, and say that the total domestic run for Avatar: The Way of Water is going to come in at about $700 million. Internationally, excluding China, at $1.3 billion or $1,300 million. From China, $250 million. Currently, it stands at $162, and there are some projections out there suggesting that the final run from China is going to be somewhere in the low to mid 200s. So let's put it at $250. Might be more, might be less. That would be a total global box office haul of $2.25 billion. And if we look, that's the grosses. What actually makes it back to theaters? Well, according to AMC Theaters, the largest chain in the world, according to the industry experts at Deadline Magazine, these are the percentages that they use that I concur with based on my financial analysis of how this industry works and financial reporting. These are the net returns from the theater. Movies bring home the highest percentages from the domestic market, the U.S. and Canada. So that $700 million projected gross in the U.S. would return about $385 million, or roughly 55% of the total take in that market. On the international side, not including China, you can see $1.3 billion only returns about $560 million. That is presuming somewhere in the neighborhood of 43 to 45% of the international take. Now, I'm using 43% here because you could have pretty much set your watch at 43% for international take on the box office for the last several years. This year, it has been lower because, as we've talked before about foreign currency exchange drag, the dollar is much stronger against a lot of foreign currencies and has been for the last several months. China itself only returns about 25% of the total box office back to Disney in this case. That means that of the $2.25 billion box office, just over $1 billion of that $1.006 billion will be returned to Fox and Disney. So to James Cameron's point, what is really the break even? Well, I think, as I said, both are correct. But why? How can both be correct? Well, if the movie breaks the $1.5 billion or the $2 billion barrier, based on the percentages that we just shared with you, you can kind of see how that would line up. I think at $1.5 billion, this movie covers all of its costs, as James Cameron seems to say. That means that of the take that comes back, maybe at that point, roughly $700 to $750 million or so of that $1.5 billion, that would cover the cost of production from Lightstorm. That would cover the distribution costs that Disney spent to market this film and whatever other little ancillary costs there may be involved on the back end. But in order for this movie to become profitable, obviously it has to get past that. But then why would Disney's break-even point be even higher at $2 billion and James Cameron's break-even point be at 1.5? Well, that's simple. That's because at 1.5, everybody, as I said, has cleared the hurdle for covering their costs. But if the Walt Disney Company wants to actually secure Avatar to put on Disney Plus after its theatrical run, it's probably going to cost Disney another couple of $100 million to do that, to pay Lightstorm. As I've mentioned before, this is not like a Marvel Cinematic Universe title. It's not like a Lucasfilm title or a Pixar or Disney Animation Studios title. These are not wholly owned properties by Disney. This is a project that was created by James Cameron. This is his property, and Disney is acting as distributor. Remember, once again, Cameron signed this deal with Fox, who was later acquired by Disney. Disney is going to have to honor that contract that Fox wrote with Cameron as part of their acquisition of Fox. And as you recall, Fox never has had any such proprietary streaming service, at least never on the scale of a Netflix or a Disney Plus, which means there would have been nothing in the contract that would have obligated James Cameron to just giving away Avatar: The Way of Water to Disney for free to put on Disney Plus. Disney is going to have to pay the piper on that one, because if Disney doesn't farm this out like Universal does with a split pay one window to places like Amazon Prime or Netflix, or like Sony does to Netflix, that means Disney's going to have to bear the full cost of putting this on Disney Plus themselves, and that means a big fat check to James Cameron. So in Disney's case, if that's what they plan to do after 90 or 120 days of being in the theaters, that means Disney is going to need this movie to probably get closer to $2 billion, where by that point, James Cameron has made some profit on this movie for sure. Disney may still be trying to cover the cost at that point of writing an additional check to Cameron to put this on Disney Plus streaming. Either way, without a doubt, this movie has been a big box office success for sure. But as we always say, that doesn't always mean it's going to be a financial success. But even in this case, it looks like financial success is all but assured for both James Cameron and the Walt Disney Company. The question at this point simply becomes how much of a profit margin, how much of a haul at the end of the day, after they've paid all of their expenses, will this be? Probably another month or two will tell the tale, because I have a feeling, like I said, this movie is going to continue to stretch its legs. Stay tuned right here to Valiant Renegade, and make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and please do leave a comment below the video before you head out today. And until next time, take care.